One of the first things that you'll do when you arrive at the cruise terminal to board your cruise ship is hand your checked luggage over to one of the porters. They'll then begin the process of that bag moving from the terminal building onto the ship and up to your cabin or stateroom, where you'll be reunited with it some hours later. For that reason, you're not going to have access to that bag for a few hours, and it's really important that you make sure you've got everything that you're going to need packed into your carry-on bag so that you don't get on board and not have something that you either really need or you really wish that you had. In this video today, I'm going to share with you 15 of the things that I always recommend people pack in their cruise carry-on bag to get their cruise off to the best start possible. If you do enjoy this video, and if you find it useful, then it would be amazing if you would think about supporting my channel by clicking both the thumbs up and the subscribe buttons. Anyway, let's get started with number 1. We're thinking about travel documents. The first thing that I always recommend people pack into their carry-on is printed travel documents. Once you complete online check-in for your cruise, you'll receive various documents that you'll be expected to present at the check-in desks inside the terminal. Yes, okay, you could show these digitally, but not all cruise lines accept digital copies. I recently took a cruise with MSC Cruises, and at the top of the check-in documents that were emailed to me in bright red font was the instruction to print them off because they wouldn't accept them digitally. There could also be technical issues or phone signal issues that could prevent you from loading anything digitally. So my advice here is to always err on the side of caution. You're better safe than sorry. Print out your boarding pass, print out your check-in documents so that you know that as soon as you arrive at that terminal, you're going to get straight on the cruise ship. And that brings us to number 2. Staying on the topic of travel documents, let's move now to think about identification. The second thing that I always advise people to pack in their carry-on luggage is either the passport or the ID that they're planning to use to get onto the cruise ship. Okay, this one might sound obvious, but porters always seem to ask me if I've definitely got my passport, so there must be so many people who check it into their main suitcase and then cause chaos when they realise up in the check-in hall that they've got no way to show who they are. It's worth highlighting that you'll need identification even for domestic cruises. I've met so many people who assume that you only need ID if you're going on an international cruise. That applies particularly to the people who would use a passport, but it is worth mentioning that for every cruise I've ever taken, I've always needed to show ID, even for the ones that don't even leave one country. If I give you the example of UK cruises, I've taken cruises in the past that have not left the United Kingdom at any point, yet one of the really strict boarding requirements is that you must have a valid passport and you must show that at check-in. So yes, number 2, your passport or your identification, get it in your carry-on. Number 3, money. This one is so obvious for me, and I can't believe that people would put this in their checked bag. But if I've got my wallet and credit cards and money with me, they're going straight into my carry-on bag. You might find that you'll need a small amount of cash during the check-in process, simply for things like providing tips to anyone that might help you along the way. For example, people taking your suitcase on board, or if somebody helps you from a mobility point of view to get on the ship, you might like to offer them a cash tip. It's worth highlighting that tipping isn't required, but I do know that some people enjoy and they like doing it, and it's especially more prevalent if you're cruising in parts of the world like the USA. The other huge benefit to having your wallet and your payment methods with you is that you can then register your payment method as soon as you get on the ship. That means that you can register your credit card, your debit card, or you can make a cash advance through one of the machines on board. That way, anybody who's left their payment methods in their checked bag, well, they'll have to go to those machines later that day, so maybe you can skip the queue. Number 4, if you're travelling with anything expensive, be sure to pack that in your carry-on bag. If you're travelling with things like technical kit, a laptop, high-end jewellery, etc., then you'll probably want to be a little bit more relaxed by having peace of mind of knowing where that stuff is at all times. For that reason, it's always best to take that in your carry-on luggage. From my point of view, when I cruise, I usually will be travelling with a laptop, a camera, microphones, and various other kit for my YouTube channel, and I will always make sure that I've got that in my carry-on because I just wouldn't rest when I got on board if I knew all of that was down in a checked bag somewhere. So if it's expensive, get it in your carry-on bag. One thing that is worth remembering here is that if you're boarding the ship early, you might actually be on the cruise ship before your cabin is ready. So whatever you're carrying in your carry-on bag, you might have to keep that with you for a couple of hours after you board the ship. So maybe don't pack every single item of jewellery that you've ever owned. Be careful with what you pack because you're going to have to carry it. Number 5, medication, including anything that you need for health conditions or also motion or seasickness medication. If you've got any health conditions, then it's always recommended to carry your medication in your carry-on bag. That means that should anything happen to your checked bag, well, you've got everything that you need medically, so it's not as much of an issue. When it comes to motion or seasickness, this is one that so many people overlook, especially people who have maybe never been on a cruise before. The reason why it's so important for you to pack your seasickness medication if you need to take it in your carry-on bag is that, best case scenario, your suitcase will arrive in your cabin or stateroom when you get to the room. That would be great. However, in some scenarios, that doesn't happen, and sometimes you'll receive your bag after the ship's already set sail and you're out at sea. What people don't realise is that a lot of the tablet medication that people take for seasickness or motion sickness requires the patient to take the tablet a number of hours before they expect to feel motion. That means that if you take the tablet and you're already at sea, then you might not really feel the benefit because you're already experiencing the motion. So yes, if you've got any medication, pack it in your carry-on, and that applies to both the medication you need for any conditions you've got and also sea or motion sickness. Number 6, suntan lotion. As soon as you get on board that ship, lots of the onboard facilities are going to be open and available for you to enjoy. That's going to include the top deck, and if you're planning to get outside to catch a bit of sun, then be sure to pack suntan lotion in your carry-on bag. If you don't want to carry a full bottle, then you can buy smaller travel-size bottles that you just simply fill with whatever sun cream it is that you like to use. This makes it super easy. You can buy these things from your local supermarket. You can also buy these refill bottles from Amazon, and I'll fill you in more on Amazon a little bit later in this video. Number 7, on the point of the sun, remember your sunglasses and maybe even your hat if you're going to be spending time outside. I've boarded a lot of ships in the past, and then when I've got on, I've realised, I don't have my sunglasses with me. That then makes such an annoying situation because every time I look outside, it's so bright. I tend to wear sunglasses most of the time when I'm travelling, so my eyes just are not used to really bright sunlight. So if I'm heading outside on day 1, I need to make sure that I've got my sunglasses and my hat. Number 8, your cruise ship's going to have hot tubs and swimming pools. If you're planning to use them on embarkation day after you get on the ship, then there are a few things that you will want to pack. First up, you're going to want to have your swimming costume in your carry-on bag, and also if you're travelling with children, you'll want to make sure that you've got swimming aids or armbands in your bag too. I've seen so many families who are dealing with children having tantrums because they're looking at a swimming pool that they can't get into because their armbands, for example, are in the checked bag. That means that that child won't then get in the pool until day 2. And that's okay if you're on a cold weather cruise because chances are nobody will be in the pool and nobody will want to be in the pool. But if you've got a child standing there looking at everybody having a great time on a hot day in the pool, then good luck. Number 9, travel insurance documentation. I always carry this with me whenever I cruise, and it's usually in my backpack. Think about the worst case scenario. Something happens to you when you get on the ship. and nobody knows who your insurer is, and then nobody can call them to make sure that the treatment plan is okay and to make sure that they can get you better, but you're covered by insurance. Similar to my earlier point on travel documentation, just print the main page of your travel insurance policy. You don't have to print all 50 pages. Hopefully, you'll never need it, but if you do, then you'll thank yourself for this one. I used to have the mindset that if I store it on my phone, that's okay. But the more cruises I've taken, the more I've come to realise that if something happens to me, how am I going to get into my phone? It's not going to be possible. So I always make sure that a cover page from my travel insurance policy, including the phone number of who to call at the insurer, is available in, for example, my stateroom throughout the cruise, and it's also in my backpack if I go for excursions or even just on day one, in case, hopefully, touch wood it never will, but in case anything happens to me. Number 10, basic toiletries. Chances are you've had to travel to get to the cruise ship today. Now, if you've been staying in a local hotel and all you've had to do is get in an Uber for 10 minutes to reach the ship, then you're probably not going to need many toiletries in your bag. However, if you've been sitting in the car for a number of hours driving to the port, or if you've maybe had to catch a flight to get to the city that your ship's departing from, then you probably will want to have some basic level toiletries so that when you get on board, you can freshen up. Now, I'm not recommending that you pack shampoo, shower gel, cologne, all of the above. You just don't need that. But think about what you would use if you get off of a long-haul international flight to freshen up when you land. Maybe things like toothpaste, maybe things like deodorant, or maybe even a little bit of hair gel so that you can jump in the shower, then you can come back out and you can feel fresh. So number 10, pack some basic toiletries. Number 11, and this one might spark a bit of interest. Remember to pack in your carry-on a bottle of wine or your choice of alcohol. This one surprises so many cruisers, especially those that haven't cruised before, or if experienced cruisers are trying a new cruise line for the first time. Not every cruise line does allow this, but some do let you take alcohol onto the ship with you when you board on embarkation day. I recently took a cruise with Cunard, and I was able to take one unopened bottle of wine on board to drink in my cabin. I could then also drink that around the ship, but if I took it to a bar or a restaurant, I'd just have to pay a corkage fee. So for me, it was perfect to be able to take my favourite wine on board to enjoy in my room. Obviously, don't pack a bottle of wine in your checked bag. Can you imagine if a bottle of wine that you've packed ends up leaking or gets smashed? It would be a disaster. Always check what you're allowed to take before you pack it. You can find the alcohol policy for each cruise line on their website, and it's usually really easy to find. It is worth mentioning that some cruise lines, if you turn up with alcohol and you're not allowed it, they'll confiscate it from you and they'll give you it back at the end of the cruise. But some cruise lines won't return it. So better safe than sorry. Don't pack any alcohol unless you know you're allowed to take it. And if you are allowed to take it, get it in your carry-on. Number 12, and this one might seem like a very strange recommendation, but the next thing I would recommend that you pack in your carry-on luggage is, wait for it, your cabin number. So many people don't realise, but when you check into the ship in the terminal building, a lot of the time you're not given your cruise card, which is what you'll then use to get into your cabin and to charge things all around the ship. That cruise card will often be waiting for you at the door of your cabin. That means that between the check-in desk and the cabin, you might have to remember what your room number is. It'll probably be printed somewhere on your check-in documents, or the check-in agent might give you a bit of paper with your number on it so that you remember a little bit easier. But I've found myself in scenarios where I get on the ship and then I think, what cabin am I actually in? I'll need to check. That then means I'm back into my bag, I'm pulling out paperwork, trying to see the room number, when the easiest way to solve that is just to pop a small bit of paper with your cabin number at one of the front sections of your bag. Then, after you've checked in and you're heading to the ship, Just pull out that tiny bit of paper and that shows you where to go. Number 13. You should pack a power pack so that you can charge any devices that you need to charge before your room's ready. If you board the cruise ship early, you could find that you'll be on board for a number of hours before your cabin or stateroom is prepared to be opened and handed over to you from the housekeeping department. That means that you'll have no access to power outlets unless you can find a venue somewhere around the ship that has a spare socket, for example. Imagine how annoying it would be if you got on that ship, you were trying to buy a Wi-Fi package or book your speciality dining options or book a shore excursion at some point, and you just couldn't do it because your phone or your laptop or whatever it is had just totally died. It's so easy to resolve that by simply taking a power bank on your cruise with you. There are so many little things like this that you can take on your cruise that just make the experience a lot easier, a lot simpler, and a lot more stress-free. If you've never taken a cruise before, you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, there is so much to remember. Don't worry, it's all absolutely fine and self-explanatory, and once you get on, it'll be absolutely fine. I do have an Amazon store that I've filled with loads of really useful cruise products, whether it be things like the power banks that I use, or other things like magnetic hooks that I talk about all the time, because so many first-time cruisers don't realise that most of the surfaces in your cabin, in other words, the walls and the roof, will actually be metal because you're on a ship. That means that the walls are then magnetic, so you can use magnets to hang things on the wall, like maybe paper or your cruise lanyard or a hat or a belt. There's so many uses for these things. If you'd like to check out my Amazon store, hopefully you'll find something useful in there for your future cruise, then just head down to the description of this video and you'll find the link there. Number 14. A refillable water bottle. When you get onto your cruise ship, you're probably going to find that the bars on board will be busy. Most ships nowadays, especially the newer ones, have water bottle refill stations on both the inside and the outside of the ship. It's usually a requirement for you to have your own water bottle to be able to use these. Yes, okay, you'll be able to get water for free up at the buffet, so you don't need to have a refillable water bottle. But in my opinion, it's far simpler and far easier if you can just fill up your water at one of these water stations and then carry it with you rather than going all the way up to the buffet, which could be 15 decks away, to get a glass of water. For all it takes to pack a refillable water bottle, throw one in your bag. One brand that I would recommend is Chili's. You can find Chili's bottles in my Amazon store as well. They keep any cold drinks cold for hours and hours, especially if you're in a warm climate. So yeah, head over to Amazon and see what you can find. Number 15. The final thing that I would recommend you pack in your carry-on bag is your list of cabin arrival checks. You might be looking at me right now and thinking, I have no idea what cabin arrival checks are. I hope you expand. Well, don't worry, it's really easy. I recently put a video together for here on YouTube that detailed out some of the checks that I do every single time I arrive in a cruise ship cabin for the first time. On that video, I have had so many comments from people who have said that they find it really useful, and from people who have been on cruises and said, I played your video when I got into the cabin, and actually, I'm really glad that I did. If you do these checks when you get into the room, it'll just make life easier for the rest of the cruise, because you'll check anything that could go wrong on day one, rather than maybe leaving it to go wrong later in the cruise. But don't worry, at the very end of this video, I'll provide you with a link to go over to that one so you can stay with me. Now, that's it. That's 15 things that I would recommend you pack in your carry-on bag when you take your next cruise. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that you found it useful. If you have, it would be great if you would click that thumbs up button to support my channel. If you've just found me today for the first time, then I'm Fraser, and I use my YouTube channel to try and share my experiences and my tips and my advice with you to hopefully help you have the best cruise possible when your time on board comes around. Now, if you'd like to stay with me and watch another of my videos, which I really hope you would, then why not come and join me over in this video? This is a video that I mentioned earlier where I detail out 15 things that every cruiser really should be doing as soon as they get into their cruise ship cabin. Some of them might sound obvious, but some of them might just surprise you. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and I'll see you over there.